You're watching City Channel 4, your window to our community.
Good morning. Yeah. So my name again is Charles Njoya. I come from Community CPA. I'm a CPA, and we're going to be talking today about financial statements. So I want to thank you all for coming out today, because on a Saturday it's not always that given to just take your day out and go for whatever. So there must be something in what you're going out for. And so we want to thank you for coming out today. And I want to make sure that we actually meet the value that you guys are expecting of us today. So my very quick thing is I'm going to just try to see, because I try to make it interactive so that if there is anything as we go ahead, if there's any question, let's just talk about it and move on. I know we don't have as much time as I had thought initially. I thought we were going to have an hour. So 35 minutes is the time. I'm just going to try to be really mindful of the time. So my initial thing was going to be just ask everybody one after the other to just tell us what were their expectations of coming here today. I know we're coming to talk about financial statements, but financial statements could be anything. It could be as much as understanding the financial statements themselves. It could also be understanding what the other people, the other parties, the other stakeholders who ask for our financial statements, what do they want to get? So I would just quickly just run through and ask if anybody, I just want each person to tell me just the first name and then tell me just what were you expecting from this meeting today? Are you coming, do you just want to understand the financial statements? Or do you want to know what your stakeholders are looking for? Or do you just want to know what a balance sheet is? I just want that. Okay, so generally, the understanding is that we just want to have a general understanding of what financial statements are. And also, some people talked about what the stakeholders are looking for when they look at financial statements. So the next thing, let's just go straight to the first slide. Back to the first slide. It's really about financial statements. What are they? What are financial statements? When you have a set of financial statements, what do you expect from financial statements? Do we know that?
I guess they probably tell you about the financial health of the company and the plan for the future, maybe?
Yep, great. So that's a great answer. Financial statements, here we're just going to be, financial statements are statements that will tell you the health of the company. They will tell you the activity over the period. They will tell you how cash has flowed over the period. So it's really the mirror of the company at a point in time. And when we talk of financial statements, we have three basic financial statements. We're just going to be looking at the basics. The basics here, the three basic primary statements are the income statement. The balance sheet is always the first you see on the financial statements. Then you see the income statement, and then there's a cash flow statement. The balance sheet is really about position. It's really at a point in time. It's really, I like the way Ying puts it. She says it's a physical exam. It's like you go to the hospital and they tell you what your health situation is at a point in time. And then financial statements are always given as of a certain date. That was fast. Okay. Maybe just keep going. Then we have the income statement. The income statement, we have, it's a statement of performance. It tells you what the activities have been over a period of time. Other than, unlike a balance sheet, which is more about a specific time, this is over a period, and it's elastic. You can choose any period. It could be 1 year, it could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, whatever you want. It's like an elastic band. You just pull it the way you want. So generally, you're talking about monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. And then with income statements, you're talking about it as when you have a balance sheet, you're talking as of a certain date. But with income statement, you're talking over a period for the year ended, for the 6 months ended, for the quarter ended. So it's for that period. Then with cash flow statement, it's more about a flow. It tells you about the flow of your cash, the movement of cash from prior year to today. You go from one point to the other. It's like a kitchen. I always quote Ying here. She says it's like a kitchen faucet. So you have cash coming in and cash going out. So that statement basically shows you how you receive and how you spent your cash. It's the flow of actual dollar through the period. So it reconciles this cash at the beginning of the period and cash at the end of the period. One key thing about the cash flow is that you can also look at it as a link between the balance sheet and the income statement. Because, and we'll talk about that more as we go ahead. Yep, just go ahead. Just keep going. Yep. So let's look at the content of a balance sheet. What do you generally see in the balance sheet? Balance sheet, there is what we call the accounting equation, which is assets must be equal to liabilities and equity. And we'll talk about what those are in a bit. What are assets? Can someone just tell me a little bit what do we think? When we talk about assets, we're thinking about your money, your car, your inventory, your home, all those things that sit on the balance sheet that we own, the physical things that we own. Some could be intangible, like you have receivables, you have a note, you have somebody who's going to pay you something. That's an asset because it's a commitment from that person. It's an agreement to get that money in. Your farm, your home, your inventory, your car, all those things, they sit. Are the things that you own. They sit on the balance sheet as your assets. Keep going.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Last class we learned about the different, what was that, everyone? The tax structures? Right?
Yes.
So, are there certain tax structures where you would be reporting your home and others where you wouldn't be? Because I feel like a sole prop, you would maybe report your home, but if you're an LLC or S corp, you would. Right?
It really depends. Tax structure is a whole set of other statements. And your tax structure, when you talk about your home, it depends if you're a sole proprietorship, a partnership, or a corporation. There are those that you call pass-through entities, where you have to report them yourself. And those that the entity becomes an entity and actually reports all those items on itself. So if you're doing your personal taxes, there's certain things that you don't put on there. They don't even appear. Your home doesn't appear. Balance sheet doesn't really matter. Does that make sense? Yes. Liabilities, this is what you owe. Commitments, what you owe people. It's like you have a bank loan, you have a car loan, a mortgage loan, whatever bills you have, all those sit on the right side of your balance sheet, on the liability side of your balance sheet, on the commitment side of your balance sheet. So you have the asset side, which is all debits, and then you have the credit side, which is all your liabilities. And then the last thing is equity. Equity is your ownership stake in the business. Initial capital contributed. What do I own? What is this business? Generally when we own a business, when there's a business, when you look at financial statements, all those assets that are sitting on the balance sheet, generally the ownership of those assets, who owns those assets? They are either owned by the debt holders or they are owned by the owners, who are the equity holders. So when you see somebody appearing, he has a home, generally we have a mortgage for owning a home. So technically that home, even though we call it our home, it belongs to the lenders because they are the one who borrowed money, who gave you the money to buy it. So they own the building, they own the property. And then if that property is owned by yourself, if you had put in your initial money to pay for it, it goes in this part of the balance sheet. So when you look at your balance sheet, you have the income side, you have the asset side, which is all what you own, all what you have, which are physical. And then on the other side, you have liabilities and equity, which shows the ownership of all these things that we have. You either own, it's either the liability or it's the capital. So when we talk of the balance sheet, we're talking about real ownership. Debt holders, we're talking about creditors, equity holders, and or both. Okay, we're talking about ownership. This is what I talked before, I'm sorry. This one is basically telling you who owns all the assets that we have. Are they debt holders or are they equity holders? Your balance sheet could actually tells you that your assets are either owned by these people or by the debt holders or the equity holders or both of them. Okay, the content of income statements. You have revenues and income, you have sales, everything that you receive from the activity that you do on a daily basis. They are your received, they are your revenues, they are your incomes. And then you also have on the other side expenses, which are your costs of goods sold, your selling and distribution expenses, your other operating expenses. So all the incomes and all the expenses, when you do a sale, when you're doing an activity, they all go into the income statement. And the link between the income statement and the balance sheet is the net income. Because the net income is what plugs in on the financial statements, on the balance sheet. At the level of the owner's equity, at the level of equity, you have your initial capital, you have your additional paid-in capital if there was any, and then you also have your net income. What are the results of activity for the period that you're talking about? Then we're talking about cash flow statement. Cash flow statement, when we do businesses, generally with small businesses, we are very interested in cash, and any business, after all. When you're doing business, the final product is to get the cash in. So you want to make sure that you're looking your cash. Only cash matters. You want to see, you might have a business that is doing very well, but as long as you're not getting cash in, you're getting into trouble. That is why if you look at the balance sheet, you're thinking you don't want to keep too much in inventory, you don't want to keep too much in current assets, you want to get the cash as quickly as possible because that's what is going to help you run the business. So we'll talk about these and how they are being, the analysis, who looks up, how the different stakeholders look at them, and that's where we might get into more details of this. We have what we call the accounting equation. Remember I just told you about assets, liabilities, equities, revenues, and expenses. The balance sheet, there is what we call in accounting the accounting equation. Assets must always be equal to equities and liabilities. Which means, and then, so when you have an asset, in accounting we have debits and credits. All that you see on the debit side, it is either an asset or it is an expense. So everything you see on the left side of your balance sheet is an asset or it's an expense. Then on the credit side, you have liabilities, owner's equities, and revenues. And all those things, if you put those together, they should always match. One. So you see there, it says assets plus expenses must be equal to liabilities, owner's equities, and revenues. That's just for. So for us who are doing business, what we tell people, what we tell business owners or people who are standing in business, generally what we see is that there's a lot of people who just have, when they start business, they don't keep their records. And that is so critical. You have to keep every record because this is the only thing that's going to help you if you were being audited by the IRS or if you were to defend yourself in any situation, you want to show your financial statement. Otherwise, you get into trouble. So that's key. So this one here, we're just going to run over it. I guess we don't have time to talk about that example right here. But this example was something that we created just to make sure that we can talk about how we get all these things. When we have a business, and on a daily basis, we're doing something. You start a business today. The following day, you're paying initial capital of $10,000. What do I do to that? How does that affect my financial statement? We were going to show you this. You're getting paid in initial capital of $10,000 in cash. So that particular transaction is going to affect your cash. It's going to affect your equity because somebody is paying in. You're not borrowing that money. That's your initial capital. So you have cash, which is an asset, and then you have you have capital, which is a liability. So you see it's debit and credit. The second one talks about you borrowed $10,000 worth of equipment from family. That is a borrowing. It's a debt, so it's a liability. But you have equipment. It's not cash. So you have an asset of equipment, and you have a liability of $10,000. Then you pay $3,500 for baking material because you're running a baking business. You pay $3,500 for baking material used. If it's used, then it's cost of goods sold. So you're debiting cost of goods sold, and what are you crediting? You're crediting cash because cash is going out. So you have an asset you have expenses in terms of cost of goods sold, and you have liability. You have a credit balance for cash. You're getting cash out. Then sold cakes for $8,000. That's sales. That's revenue. You have that goes on your income statement. You have revenue for $8,000, and if you sell it, it doesn't say that you sold an account. Therefore, it's definitely cash. So cash is being increased by $8,000, and your sales are increased by $8,000. So it's a debit again. It's a debit of cash. It's a debit of cash and credit of sales. Then the last one is you paid salaries. When you pay salaries, there's an expense of $2,000, and there's cash that's been moving out of $2,000. So let's just move on. All what I said were in these journal entries. For anyone who wants to go through them, wants to understand them more, you have the journal entries that are being put in there, and then you go further. Let's just go further. You have the balance sheet. This is a balance sheet that are created based on that example that we talked about. We have the journal entries, we have the balance sheet, and how they sit on the balance sheet. The balances sit on the balance sheet. That we can, when you can go through that when you get the slides. That's the income statement of those transactions. And then this is the cash flow statement resulting from those transactions. Let's keep going. Then readers of financial statements. Again, here, we're basically talking about the different readers of financial statements. Who are the key stakeholders? There's so many stakeholders on the financial statements. But these are the ones that we're looking at. Investors. They want to look at financial statements. What are they looking for when they look at financial statements? Other stakeholders, banks. You want to get a loan. The banks will ask you, we need your financial statements. What are they looking for? The owners. We are the owners of the business. Why do we need financial statements? We want to know that. Then the government, the IRS, the state, they need financial statements. Why are they looking for those? We need to understand what they're looking for and how we can better make it in a way that we don't expose ourselves. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Investors. When I want to invest in a business, I'm looking for a business that is performing, a business that has cash flow, my intention. It all depends on what I want. But for basic understanding, we want to know if we're looking at profitability, it doesn't make sense just to make profits if we're not getting cash flow in, because the business will run bankrupt if we don't make money. Then we want to look at a trend. You want to invest in a business, you want to see what happened last year compared to what happened this year, what happened the year before, and what are the projections in the business. You want to see all those and understand and see if it's a profit-making business. Then you look at profitability ratios. When you look at those things, you look at profitability ratios. And here, I want to emphasize something. When you're looking at these ratios, you're looking at them in terms of comparison. They don't mean anything if you just look at them on a standalone basis. You're looking at them, comparing them to previous years or projecting them to the future years. So you're looking at the gross margin. The gross margin is basically taking your gross profit over your turnover. You want to see, am I making enough money to be able to pay other expenses and still make money at the end? Profit margin ratios. You take your profit, all of your profit divided by your turnover is going to give you a ratio. You compare that to the market. What is the industry doing in this type of business? Am I doing better than industry? Am I doing worse than industry? You want to look at all these things. When you have a company that's doing better than industry, then you want to go in there. If it's doing worse than industry, you don't want to go in there. Return on capital employed. When you put in your capital, you want a return on your capital. You want to see how is the company doing in terms of capital. when I look at the returns that the company is making, when I compare that to my returns, is it better? Is it better compared to the industry? Is it what I'm waiting for? You're looking at all those things. Return on equity. You look at the equity, you look at the return, and then it's going to help you understand your earnings per share. Are you going to get enough money on this business or not? And when you look at those things again, you want to look at them in terms of a trend rather than just one at one point in time, because most of those are balance sheet items. Some of them, even though they are income statement, you want to look at the trend. Then there are liquidity ratios as well. Liquidity ratios is just making sure that you have enough cash to be able to run the business. So it's really telling you liquidity. You're thinking of current ratio. What's my current assets over my current liability? Am I doing good on those? You don't want to have a business where your current ratios, you have current liability is so high compared to your current assets. It simply means that if your creditors were to ask you, those current creditors were to ask you to pay them today, you might not be able to pay them. And if you can't, they might run you into bankruptcy. So those are the type of things you look at. Let's go on. Current ratio, quick ratio. Quick ratio is even more critical because in quick ratio, they're telling you that, okay, I don't want to see inventory in it. You take your current assets, you divide by your current liabilities without any inventory, because inventory could be a problem. I just want to see how the business is doing without that pile of inventory. Then working capital. Working capital is really how much cash do I have? Current assets minus current liabilities. How much cash flow do I have? How much capital am I working on? So those are the type of things the investors are looking at. Because if you want to get into something, you want to get into something that makes sense, that's going to give you the return you're looking for. Then the bankers. Some of the key ratios that the bankers are looking for is debt to equity ratio. Debt to equity ratio is basically, they are basically saying that if you have a high debt, you have all those assets, but you took them on loan. You have your car note, you have your housing, you have your house, your mortgage, all these things, and then you don't have any assets. So your debt to equity is, let's say, generally they want them to be two. That's your debts. Your debts are lower. Your equity is more than your debt 2 times. If it goes less than 2 times, then they start getting, when you have more than 2 times, then you still have scope to get more money from the bank. But so they do debt to equity ratios. They look at your cash flow because they want to make sure that this business is going to be able to pay me back. So if I give you money, if I loan you money, I'm going to get my money back. So I want to see projected cash flow or even cash flow at a point in time to see, not only at a point in time, but you want to see projected and the past cash flow to see if there's enough money to be able to pay my interest and to pay my principal. Then profitability ratios. We talked about profitability ratios before. So the bankers are also looking at profitability ratios. What are owners looking for? We are the owners of the business. We want to make sure that all those other third parties are being satisfied. We're looking at our cash flow. We want to make sure that we can we can meet the commands that are available, the requirements to run the business. We are looking at our cash flow, and generally, when you have a small business, people always run on cash flow. They're trying to see, I have this commitment, how am I going to meet that commitment? You want to see your cash flow. You want to do some projections on your cash flow. Operating activities. You want to look at your operations. What are your incomes? What are your expenses? You're looking at them all the time to make sure, am I making enough margin on my business? Is this business taking me down the drain? Things like that. Business performance. Those are the type of things you're looking at. Employee performance. You have people working for you. You have to have a way of knowing that this guy is performing to my expectation. This guy is not performing to my expectation. You have employee performance. You look at your salaries. You compare to the net income, to the net revenues or whatever margins that you decide to assess that employee on. Then you also have machine performance. When you have your assets, you have all these fixed assets in the business, you want to make sure that those assets are giving you the return. At times you could have huge machines and they're just giving you very little return. Maybe they're not being used to their full capacity. Those are the type of things you want to make sure. You see the capacity of all these things and you want to make sure that you're using them to full capacity. The government, the government agencies, IRS, the state, what are they looking for? When I know one of the things that happen with, especially with small businesses, is you run a business and then you're not looking at you are so focused on the operations that you forget about taking care of your financial statements, taking care of your expenses, your records, keeping records. And generally, you get the IRS. If you don't send your returns to IRS, if you don't prepare your returns on time, IRS is going to prepare it for you. And how do they do it? They base it off other entities within your sector in the market. They have their information, and generally it's always going to be in their favor. They don't have all your details. If you don't have details of your revenues, you don't have details of your expenses, you don't have all those details, they're going to send you a number, and if you cannot defend it or show that you had something else, you're going to have to pay that. And generally, with the IRS, they are more concerned about having more revenue and less expenses because they get net, that's where they make the money. So they try to minimize your liabilities and increase your assets. Because when they minimize liabilities, they are changing those liabilities into revenues, which is good for them. When they minimize your assets, they are maximize your assets, they are taking expenses and making them assets. That way, you have to be able to explain whatever is sitting there in a proper way. And then they also have what they call data match. Data match simply means that they have the information coming from different sources. The businesses the companies you do business with, they communicate with the IRS. They give them the information. So when you provide your information, if it's any different, that's a red flag for the IRS. And that's how you get letters from the IRS. So if you can make sure that all those documents, data match is okay, and then you can actually support every item that's sitting on your balance sheet, that's very good for you as a business person. And that's, you can defend yourself with IRS. One other thing that the IRS does when they're looking at your returns, they do trend analysis. They look at your business, they look at what you paid last year, what you paid the year before. What were your expenses last year, what were your expenses the year before? If they see anything that's really out of the ordinary, it's a red flag. So then sector analysis, we just talked about it. They look at the sector in which you operate, and then they're like, okay, in this sector, this is generally where they stand in terms of revenue. This is where we are, and depending on where you are, where you are located, they do all these analysis and they bring out whatever number. So when we send our returns to the IRS, generally they won't come back to you if all these things match, if all these things are making sense to them. But if they don't, then that's how you get letters from the IRS. Then key takeaway. Primary statements of the financial statements are balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement. Again, this is really for illustrative purposes. These are the basics that you get on a financial statement. There are lots of other things on financial statements. These are for the basics. These are the basic primary statements. The balance sheet is made up of assets, liabilities, and owner's capital. And we just talked about the accounting equation, which is assets must always equal liabilities and owner's capital. That's it. Then record keeping. Again, this is really something that we've had in our business, in our practice. We have a lot of problems with young entrepreneurs, with startups and things like that, and business people who just don't keep the records. They come with patchy records. If you have patchy records, you run the risk of having the IRS running behind you, and you don't want to get that. So you always keep all records at all times, because that's the only thing that's going to save you in case of an audit. So if you have doubts about this, you can contact us. We have our contacts all there. If you have any questions, you can call me, you can call the firm. There's a lot of people who are here to help you with your taxes, with your audits, with any letters that you receive from the IRS, setting up your business, and things like that. Thank you. So.
Good morning. Wendy said I'm with the University of Iowa Small Business Development Center, and we're a kind of an economic development group. There's 15 offices in the state of Iowa, and my office covers a 5-county area. There's also another small business development center up in Cedar Rapids at Kirkwood Community College that's run by Scott Swenson. And so what we do is we offer free and confidential assistance to people that are starting businesses or have businesses. So we primarily work one-on-one. In my particular case, we do offer some workshops primarily through the Papa John Entrepreneurial Center. Most of these are free on all kinds of various subjects, and we bring in successful entrepreneurs to talk about their experience. And then we offer a class too in the fall and spring for community entrepreneurs. But there's academic courses too that you can take at the University of Iowa in entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship's very very popular these days, and we also coordinate with and participate in the meetups. I don't know if anybody's mentioned the meetups in the corridor, but the corridor is very active in the entrepreneurship area. So on Wednesday mornings, every other week, down at the film scene, from 8 to 9, entrepreneurs get together and talk about their issues. What's bothering them, what's been successful, how can they solve this problem or that problem. And then down at the film scene from 9 to 10, there's either 1 or 2 successful entrepreneurs that talk about their startup, what made them successful, what business they're in, and, what kind of obstacles they ran into and how they got around those obstacles. And you can ask questions. Also, you can criticize them too. Maybe they did something you think, wasn't the best thing to do in their particular case. Well, you can tell them, how next time maybe they can be more successful with their venture and become more profitable. So our mission, at the Small Business Development Center is to get people into business, to keep them in business, to increase their profitability. We get some funding from the state and from the federal government, and the state and federal government wants a return on their investment. And they get that when you're successful creating jobs, your businesses are paying taxes, real estate taxes, corporate taxes, payroll taxes. We get evaluated on a regular basis, and they look at the economic impact that we create. So, my office is out at the Bio Venture Center at the University of Iowa, which is in Coralville, but I get downtown quite a bit. If you want to meet, typically you just go to our website, iowasbdc.org, and you can send me an email or even get on my calendar and make an appointment, or you can just call out to my office. My business card's back there, our brochures are back there, and we'd love to work with you. Not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur. I mean, one thing we do that we don't get much credit for, I think, is kind of sometimes keep people from getting into business. We don't want them to, and if you get into business, we want you to be able to feel, we want you to be able to fail quickly and economically. We don't want you to risk your retirement. We don't want to risk your house, your car. So, we spend quite a bit of time on looking at feasibility. We've kind of adopted the business model canvas, and I'm not going to go into detail about that, but a typical business plan, they've discovered, is kind of a work of fiction when you're starting a business. It's okay until you meet the reality of customers. So, we want you to be sure that there is a market for your service or product before you, risk your personal finances to get into that business, and try to get you into business as cheaply as possible. A lot of what we do is in the financial area. People want to know where the free money is. Well, there's not a lot of free money out there, especially for-profit businesses. So we help with loan packagings, and we help with working with investors. There are some venture funds out there. Typically, that's pretty expensive money, so we try to avoid venture firms, but with some businesses, especially like the ones out at the Bio Venture Center where I am at, they're just not bankable. They've got to take on equity from angel investors and from venture capital firms. So, feel free to call, make an appointment. We're around 12 months of the year, so we don't close for summer break at the university, and we can also maybe try to network you into some of these other entities that are around and help you in any way we can to make you a successful or kind of avoid a bad situation. So I guess we're going to take questions later.
Sure, yeah.
And I want to thank Wendy. She's on my advisory board, and I really appreciate that, Wendy.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Well, I'd also like to invite Steve Abram up to talk a little about what Kirkwood has to offer and what resources may be available to you through Kirkwood as well. Steve.
And my colleague, Jim Crowther, is going to pass out some materials for you really quickly. So you're at a community college. We're Kirkwood Community College, of course. Welcome, everyone, and we really appreciate you showing up and taking part in these kinds of activities for the community, so that's fantastic. What Jim is passing out to you right now is we have programs here at Kirkwood also at the Iowa City campus, but also at our main campus, but I'm going to focus mostly on what we have here. We have 2 degree programs. One is a degree program, the other is a certificate program. If you are a person who's interested in continuing on to the Tippie College of Business and getting a degree in, say, accounting or something like that, then you would probably be interested in the newest degree program we have on this campus and at our main campus, and that is the Business Administration AAS, Associate of Applied Science degree. And this is a transfer degree, and it's the first AAS degree that transfers directly to a 4-year school. What this degree does is, after 2 years, you'll take these complemented classes, and when you look at this sheet of paper, on the very front is basically the complement of classes that you would take. And I give them to you in a recommended order, but they're not necessarily need to be taken in this order because many of them don't have prerequisites. I just do that for convenience purposes. But this is the actual copy of the agreement that we have with the university. And if you look at the back page, it's actually the articulation agreement itself. And on that page, it gives you the specifics about what GPA you have to have to be able to articulate directly into the Tippie College of Business. And some of the other things, what kind of, if you're going to major in accounting, you need to make a B in those 2 accounting courses, and so forth. So this might be interesting to some people. If you complete this program and you hit the GPA requirement, you can transfer directly into the Tippie College of Business. You don't. It's different than our 2+2 program, which is a liberal arts degree that you would get. It's kind of a generic liberal arts degree, and then you would transfer to the University of Iowa, and then you would apply to whatever college it is you wanted to go into, and then they would tell you what you needed to meet in order to get into their college, where this one directly transfers into Tippie. So it's a real slick, clean pathway. The other thing about this program is we now have the same agreement with Mount Mercy University up in Cedar Rapids. So if you're not a Big Ten university kind of person and you want that smaller private school, Mount Mercy will also accept this. The only difference between the Mount Mercy and the University of Iowa agreement is that Mount Mercy does not have a language requirement. So if you're one of these people who wants to avoid taking Spanish or French, you could go on to Mount Mercy and not have to take that foreign language, where Tippie still requires that. On Monday, I'm meeting with the University of Northern Iowa about this agreement. So hopefully by the end of next year, the majority of all the colleges in Iowa will accept this agreement. So this is a pathway for a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree first here, and then you can go on to get a 4-year degree later on. The other piece of paper that Jim gave you is our entrepreneurship certificate program. Some of you are not interested in going to a 4-year school. You're not interested in a Associate of Applied Science degree. You just want to open a business, and you want some knowledge to go along with opening that business. And so this is a 18 credit. You can do it 1 year. It's an entrepreneurship certificate. And basically, this is this certificate is available totally online if you want to take online classes, but many students don't like the online classes. So what we're going to do is at this campus, I'm going to try to offer all these courses in a face-to-face atmosphere. So those students who like coming to a classroom will be able to do that. The first course we're going to offer is going to be in the fall, this fall semester, and it's going to be a night course, and it's Introduction to Entrepreneurship. That introductory course is going to have a lot of guest speakers in it. People who are entrepreneurs in our community who are going to come and talk to you about some of the trials and tribulations that they had. But the other thing you're going to learn in that Intro to Entrepreneurship is we're going to do a feasibility study. And so anyone who has an idea for a business, we're going to help you along with that feasibility study piece of it. Then in the spring semester, I'm going to offer the second part, and that would be the business plans for entrepreneurs. And we'll talk about what a business plan is, once again, why it's important, the various pieces of a business plan. We'll also talk a little bit about the kind of the movement away from business plans. Dan Gumpert wrote a book called Burn Your Business Plan a few years ago, where he talks about, the only reason why we create business plans is basically for a bank. And many of us don't get financing from a bank any longer. And so we have to get our financing at other places. And so that's kind of what Burn the Business Plan kind of talks about, having a good story, being passionate about what it is you want to do. And so we'll take a look at both those versions of that. And then the other courses that are in this program, if you're interested, are available online, but we are slowly going to integrate them into the course offerings on this campus. So things like human resource management, I believe we already offer once a year on this campus. Principles of marketing, we offer once a year on this campus, but I'm going to try to get them into a regular cycle so that anyone who wants to do this kind of a certificate program will have that opportunity to get them all in face-to-face in a normal one-year period of time. And I think that's it. All right?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah. And I'll just remind you that we at the city will help you get connected with any resources that we're aware of. And at the city, I'm not sure, but you have your folders from the very first session or the first time you came in. The sheet in there, Starting a Business in Iowa City, will be a good reference for you for a number of questions you may have following up. We also have a microloan program and can help link you up with that. It is a loan program, as Paul had said, there really aren't very many grant programs out anymore. But we would be happy to work with you in making application to that program. The other things that the city can do are to help you figure out a place to operate your business. Now, we're not real estate people necessarily, but the important thing from the city's perspective is that you're operating your business in a place that is permitted to operate that business. So, for example, you couldn't have a car repair shop working out of your garage. That's not permitted by city law. So, first call to the city to find out if what you propose to operate as a business is allowed in the place that you want to do it would be a really good thing to do. And like I said, again, we're happy to help with any questions. If we may not have the answer, we know people that do. And finally, the City of Iowa City supports the Iowa City Area Development Group, and they operate an office called the CoLab. There's one in Iowa City, there's one in Coralville, and I think there's one in North Liberty now, which is a place for business people to come in and rent space. And if you're thinking, well, I can't pay for renting an office space, you can rent a couple square feet on a desk, actually, for very little money, and you are working in a place called a co-working lab that might have other people in that you would strike up friendships with, have discussions about small business, entrepreneurialism, and that sort of thing. And it really has proven to be fairly successful over the last 3 years, so we can help you make that connection as well. Finally, I would like to reintroduce Dan Kim with Community CPA, and he will fill you in, give you a little more information about the flyer that's in front of you on your tables. So, Dan.
Good morning, everybody. It's always good to see you guys week after week coming in on those Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings. It's, it takes special people and special drive these days to make these kind of trips and taking your day out of your regular schedule to, educate yourself and to differentiate yourself from others. Like Paul and Steve and Wendy mentioned, a lot of these things, we can't do it by ourselves. We need each other. We need to network. We need to gain education. And we also need to find funding. And so I wear many hats. And one other hat I wear other than community CPA is program manager at Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. So it's a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving entrepreneurs that are immigrants to the entrepreneurship area, right? So we have partnered with Community CPA and put together free classes and courses and meetups for you guys to enjoy. And we are doing that starting in June 14th. So if you can look at those flyers that are laying around on the tables, you can look at that for more information. I will be sending out email to everybody so you guys can make sure to attend and give you guys reminders for them. And as far as the nonprofit Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit is concerned, we have free funding that is available in September and also in November for the amounts of $3,000 and also $5,000 provided by different banks. And it's a competition. It's like a pitch contest. So if you're thinking of an idea, thinking of a business to start, this would be a great way to get your business plan, marketing plan, and the 3-year budget projection all in order. And, Paul can help you with the business plan, and Kirkwood and different organizations are out there to help you and support you. I myself will be able to help you with that. If you're interested in that, let us know. And my contact information is also on the flyer. So this competition is for you to stand in front of 700, 800 plus entrepreneurs and business people from all over the Midwest. So we do it annually in Ankeny at FFA Enrichment Center. That's where we have Wells Fargo sponsoring $5,000 free, no strings attached funding for you to get started on your business. So it's the best way for you to market. It's the best way for you to network. It's the best way for you to find extra funding for you to get started on your business. And so contact me if you're interested. And I know I'll be seeing more of you. So thank you for coming. Yeah.
Where is this located? Is this in a building?
Yep. These classes. Yep. These classes are located in the bottom right corner, 447 Highway 1 West. It's right across the Slager Appliance. It's on Highway 6. So.
Next to Paul's.
Right. So we hope to see you there. I'll send you a reminder. So we'll talk to you guys again.
Well, one more time, thank you again so much for making this first series of ours very successful. We wish you the very best and hope to see you asking questions and being successful business entrepreneurs in our community. So again, thank you very much.
You're watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.